4 astronauts are right now farther from Earth than any human beings in history. They can see the moon with their own eyes. They flew right next to it, and they are not landing on it. No footprints, no flag, no touchdown. Now I know what you're thinking. What? Why? Wasn't the whole point to land on it? And that question, that exact question, is what this video is about, because the answer is not what you think. It is not politics. It is not budget cuts. It is not some last-minute technical failure. The real answer reveals something far more important, something that completely changes how you understand what just happened on April 1st, 2026, when NASA launched Artemis II. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you won't just understand this mission, you'll understand why it might be the most important spaceflight since Apollo. On April 1st, 2026, NASA launched 4 astronauts aboard the Orion spacecraft on top of the Space Launch System. This is the most powerful rocket ever flown with a crew on board. The mission is called Artemis II. 10 days, 4 crew members, and its official purpose, straight from NASA, is a crewed lunar flyby. The crew travels to the moon, flies around it, and comes back to Earth. That is the mission, not a landing, a flyby. Now here is the part that makes this historic, even without a landing. At its farthest point, Orion reached approximately 756 miles from Earth. That number broke the record set by Apollo 13 back in 1970. These 4 astronauts are officially the farthest traveling humans in the history of our species. On April 6th, the crew performed the lunar flyby. They swept close to the moon, took high-resolution photographs, and made direct observations of the lunar surface, including regions of the far side that human eyes have never seen this closely before. So this mission is real. It is historic. It is happening. It just is not a landing. And there are 5 specific reasons why. Let me walk you through every single one. Reason 1. Orion is not a lander. It cannot physically touch down on the moon. This is the most important reason, and it is the one most people completely miss. The spacecraft carrying the Artemis II crew is called Orion, and Orion is not a moon lander. It was never designed to be one. It does not have the engines for a powered descent to the lunar surface. It does not have the landing legs to touch down. It does not have the systems to launch back off the moon. None of that. Not even close. Orion has one job: carry astronauts from Earth, travel through deep space, keep the crew alive, and bring them home through Earth's atmosphere at around 25,000 miles per hour. That re-entry alone is an enormous engineering challenge that most people completely underestimate. The heat, the speed, the forces involved. Orion was built specifically to survive all of that. But landing on the moon is a completely different problem that requires a completely different machine. Think of it this way. Imagine you are flying a commercial airplane over an island, and someone asks you, "Why didn't you just land in the ocean and dock underwater?" The answer is obvious. That is not what an airplane does. You need a submarine for that. Totally different vehicle, totally different engineering. That is exactly the situation with Orion and the moon. Orion is the airplane. The moon's surface requires the submarine, and the submarine is not on this mission. So the very first reason Artemis II is not landing. The vehicle in space right now is physically incapable of doing it. That was never the plan. Not for this mission. Not ever for Orion alone. Reason 2. A moon landing needs a completely separate landing system that is not ready yet. So if Orion cannot land, what does land? The answer is a human landing system. A dedicated lander spacecraft built specifically to descend from lunar orbit down to the surface, operate there, and launch back up. And here is the thing. That lander is not something you just strap onto Orion and go. It is an entirely separate vehicle. For the Artemis program, NASA contracted commercial companies to develop these landers. SpaceX is building one called Starship HLS. Other companies are involved too. But here is the reality. As of right now, these landers have not been tested anywhere near the level needed to trust them with human lives on the moon. The full landing system, descent, surface operations, ascent back to orbit, docking with Orion. None of that chain has been proven with crew aboard. And in February 2026, NASA made this completely clear when they updated the entire Artemis roadmap. They added a brand new mission, Artemis III, in 2027, specifically to test the commercial landers in low Earth orbit before anyone tries to use them near the actual moon. Read that again. NASA felt it was necessary to add an entire extra mission just to test the landers closer to home before attempting a real lunar landing with crew. That tells you exactly where the landing system stands right now. It is being developed. It is being tested. It is not ready for humans on the moon. And until it is ready, there is no landing. Simple as that. Reason 3. A moon landing is not one step. It is 11 steps and everyone has to work. Most people imagine a moon landing like this. You fly there, you go down, you walk around, you come back. Simple, clean, one motion. The reality in 2026 is nothing like that. A real Artemis lunar landing is a chain of 11 separate critical operations. And if any single one of them fails, the mission fails. And in the worst case, the crew does not come home. Here is the actual sequence. Step 1. Astronauts launch from Earth in Orion. Step 2. Orion travels out to the moon. Step 3. Orion has to find and dock with a separate human landing system already waiting in lunar orbit. Step 4. Part of the crew physically transfers from Orion into the lander. Step 5. The lander separates and descends to the lunar surface under its own power. Step 6. The crew operates on the surface. Step 7. The lander launches back off the moon, which is its own enormously complex operation. Step 8. The lander has to find Orion again in orbit and dock with it. Step 9. The crew transfers back into Orion. Step 10. Orion fires its engines and begins the journey home. Step 11. Re-entry into Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour and splashdown. 11 steps, 11 points of failure. And the further down that list you go, the more new and unproven the hardware becomes. Artemis II handles steps 1 and 2. That is it. Steps 3 through 11 require systems, hardware, and operational procedures that have not yet been tested with crew in the conditions they will actually face. This is why you do not just pile everything onto one mission, because if something goes wrong at Step 7, launching off the moon, there is no rescue mission, there is no backup. The crew is on the surface of the moon, 239,000 miles from Earth, and they cannot get home. You do not attempt Step 7 until you are certain about Steps 1 through 6, and right now, NASA is not certain enough, so they are building toward it carefully and correctly. Reason 4. This is the first time humans have ever been in Orion in deep space. You do not skip straight to the hardest part. Artemis I launched in 2022. It flew Orion all the way around the moon and back. It was a complete success, but there was no crew on board. It was an uncrewed test flight. Artemis II is the very first time human beings are inside Orion beyond low Earth orbit. The first time ever. That alone makes it one of the most significant missions in decades. And here is something most people do not think about. A spacecraft behaves differently when people are living inside it. Life support goes from being a system on a checklist to being the air the crew is actually breathing. Thermal control goes from a performance metric to the difference between the crew surviving or not. Communications become the crew's only connection to Earth, 239,000 miles away. Every single system has to be verified with real humans aboard in the real deep space environment before you trust those systems with a mission 10 times more complex than a flyby. Think about it from a basic logic standpoint. If this is your very first crewed Orion flight in deep space, and it is, why would you simultaneously attempt the most dangerous, most complex, most failure-prone part of the entire program on that exact same flight? You would not. Nobody rational would. You prove the foundation first. You make sure the vehicle works, the crew systems work, the flight profile works, and then you add the next layer. That is exactly what Artemis II is doing. It is proving the foundation. And without proving the foundation, nothing else that comes after it is safe to attempt. Reason 5. NASA officially changed the roadmap, and that tells you the full picture. Sometimes what an organization changes tells you more than anything they say. In February 2026, NASA officially restructured the entire Artemis program schedule, and the update is very revealing. Before the change, Artemis III was supposed to be the first lunar landing mission. After the change, here is the new sequence. Artemis II, April 2026. Crewed lunar flyby. Testing Orion and SLS with astronauts in deep space for the first time. That is right now. Artemis III, 2027. No longer a moon landing. Now a low Earth orbit demonstration mission specifically to test one or both commercial human landing systems in a safer environment before anyone tries using them near the moon. Artemis IV, early 2028. This is now the first actual crewed lunar surface mission. 2 astronauts will descend to the moon for the first time since 1972. NASA looked at the full picture, the hardware maturity, the testing requirements, the risk level, and decided that adding one more step before the landing was the right call. That is a significant decision. It means the agency was honest with itself about where things actually stand, instead of rushing to hit a headline date and putting crew in danger. And that decision perfectly explains why Artemis II is a flyby and not a landing, because the landing is not one step away, it is 2 steps away. And those 2 steps are being taken in exactly the right order. Why this mission is historic anyway. Before we close, I want to make one thing very clear. Artemis II is not a consolation prize. It is not a stepping stone that nobody will remember. It is genuinely, historically significant on its own terms. This is the first time human beings have traveled beyond low Earth orbit in more than 50 years. Since Apollo 17 in 1972, every human spaceflight has stayed relatively close to Earth. The ISS orbits at around 250 miles up. The Moon is 239,000 miles away. For half a century, that distance was only history. Now it is a live mission. 4 people are out there right now proving that humans can operate in deep space again, proving that Orion works with crew aboard, proving that the road back to the Moon is not just a plan on paper, it is real. And psychologically that matters enormously. Before you can normalize landing on the Moon, you have to normalize going back near it at all. Artemis II is doing exactly that. So why is Artemis II not landing on the Moon? Because Orion cannot land. Because the lander is not ready. Because a moon landing is 11 steps, and most of them are still being proven. Because this is the first crewed Orion deep space flight, and you prove the foundation before building the rest. And because NASA looked at reality honestly and added the steps needed to do this safely. That is not failure. That is how serious exploration actually works. The landing is coming. NASA has it scheduled for early 2028, and it can only happen because of what is happening right now. 4 human beings farther from home than anyone in over 50 years, proving every piece of the foundation that the landing will depend on. No boots on the lunar surface yet, but because of Artemis II, those boots are finally on their way. If this video helped you understand what is actually happening up there right now, share it with someone who thinks nothing important happened, because something enormous is happening, and most people have no idea.